right, we're still having the same camera issues, right?
Yes.
Okay, just as a heads up for everybody, the cameras today, due to a software upgrade that's required, is just gonna be the whole view as you see it on the screen of the legislature. We won't be able to zoom in to specific individuals as they speak. So folks wonder what's going on. But it is Wednesday, August 2nd, and it's 3:03. I'd like to call the meeting of the Housing and Economic Development Committee to order. It is a light agenda today, so hopefully we can help folks reclaim some time this afternoon and get on to other exciting activities or work that's needed. Do we have any public comment today? All right, no public comment. One change to the agenda, we are going to remove resolution and designation of tourism promotion agency for state of New York ID 11729. That's not quite ready for our consideration, so that's going to come off the agenda. I do not have a chair's report at this time, so I'll turn it over to Bridget for county administration update.
Great, thanks, Greg. Good afternoon. Just two quick updates for today's meeting. The Director of Workforce Development search is still ongoing, but we do hope to wrap that process up soon. The other update is that as a result of this committee's meeting last month, I know there was some general discussion on outside agencies requesting funding. So County Administrator Lisa Holmes has been drafting some language to include in the fiscal policy. We know that we just reviewed recent updates to the fiscal policy, but that will go back our organizational review to outline the procedure for requesting that funding. So that'll be coming soon, like I said, for your review. And those are my updates.
Thanks so much, Bridget. Any questions for Bridget or county administration?
One question. So Bridget, will that be when you do that last part about how organizations would ask for monies? Is that something that can be easily found, will be easily found on the website?
Yes, it will be included in the administrative policy manual, and we can direct folks there.
Great, great. Sure, we can do that too. Great, thank you. Sure.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. The next item on the agenda is the homelessness and housing update. We have Tammy Baker, the Tompkins County Homeless Services Coordinator. I'm going to get that memorized at some point. We need an acronym for it or something.
Don't use HSC.
Yeah, yeah. It's already. We'll have to come up with something. Right now, we have to get into this. So again, we wanted to leave this as an item on the agenda so that it remains the focus of the committee and the legislature. And we've asked Tammy to provide regular updates at each one of our meetings. So they'll obviously vary in length. If there's a lot to report, we'll take as much time as needed. If it's a brief report, we completely understand that as well. So Tammy, I guess I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. I was actually just talking to Dominic about changing the title because I've gotten like 5 calls since I've been in this position around direct service work. So I think it's confusing. Different conversation, but I think HSC also is confusing because that as a motivation. So I don't have a lot to update from last time. The biggest thing is the Community Outreach Program Steering Committee. We finally have people designated from the county and the city, as well as Family and Children's, and Nan, who's the new CEO of Downtown Ithaca Alliance. So it's a big team right now. There's like 17 members, which is a lot for a steering committee. But since it hasn't met in a couple of years, we're just going to have this group come together and talk about it, look at the contract. And so all the members will be getting an email to set us for a calendar. They'll be available. And the shelter numbers haven't changed much from last month. Well, I guess it was the 14th. Only went up by 2. They still have 8 families. And there's 18 dependents in the shelter and motel system. So I mentioned the coordinated entry list last time. Coordinated entry is a volunteer. So it's a voluntary process. You don't have to be put on it. If you are on the coordinated entry, if there's any permanent supportive housing vacancies anywhere, they have to come off that list. The reason why is because coordinated entries have related and all the permanent supportive housing is HUD. So any openings have to come from that list. Right now, there are 39 youth on the coordinated entry list. And I point that out because we don't have a youth shelter, and I've been looking into that. I talked to Greg about it the other day. It's something that I think our community really needs. And there's 80 adult head of households. The total with dependents is 168. So the coordinated entry list right now is 168. The motel shelter, there's 80 altogether with independents. So that's 88 people. We don't know where they're staying. So I think the coordinated entry we don't have a real number of how many people are actually homeless in the county. We don't have a pulse right now of how many encampments there are and how many people are living up there. So I'm working on trying to figure out how to do a walkthrough with outreach workers and possibly IPD so we can get kind of a sense of how many people are out there. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
It's my understanding there's like 9 families, I guess, with children.
Yes, there's 8 families that are in the motel shelter system.
Just wondering.
Mike, can you use your mic?
Those would seem to be like the super critical ones, because wouldn't we want to get them in before school starts?
Yeah, I mean, so the way the coordinated entry list is, everybody that's in the shelter system is on the coordinated entry list. That's just part of the process when they go into the shelter. And so anybody with a family, they would be considered, they have a high vulnerability score. And that's how people get taken off the list. Like you could have been on it for 5 months and all of a sudden I'm on it and I've got 3 kids. So my vulnerability score will be higher. So they're going to be the highest need to get off.
And it's just good it's done at apartments.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't have the details. Like, I don't know if the people that are the families, if they have a housing choice voucher, which would be a Section 8 voucher, or they have to use some funding through DSS. So I'm not sure the status of those 8 families.
Any other questions for Tammy today? No? All right. Well, thanks for the update. Thanks for all the work. I know it's an onion with many layers, and you continue to peel it back, and appreciate educating us as a committee and individual legislators as you have an opportunity to go through the process.
And bureaucracy is slow.
Welcome to the team.
It's really slow. But one of the things I did, I guess, went up to worked with the railroad, I think Rich John did, and some common council folks and IPD, we walked the railroad property. So working with the railroad to look at how to make it safer. They've had a lot of concerns on the track. Other places not here, but they've actually ran over people. People's legs have been cut off. They've killed a couple people on the track. So nothing's happened here, but they're really concerned. They don't want that to happen here. So we're looking at what's going to be the best thing to do with that railroad land and how would we successfully move people to either the green zone or whatever the city's going to decide with their land management. They have had some people playing chicken with the train. Trains are really big, so it's hard to stop really slowly. So they are concerned about the safety because the only way to get to this area is walking on the railroad track. So working with so working on that to set some of side things happening.
Thanks so much. All right, next up, we have Planning and Sustainability Departments to report and discussion the broadband update ID 11817. I see we have all of our friends from ECC Technologies joining us. Joe, Justin, Mark, Cameron too, right? And I guess, Nick, I don't know if you want to join the table for this conversation. And I also have Katie Gals on board, but I get, Joe, are you going to lead the conversation for your team?
Yeah, I will. I'll do a brief presentation, an update from the last one that we did.
Okay, great. Unless there's Katie or Nick who wants to give a little update here, or we can just turn it over to ECC.
I'm okay, just.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nick, if you want to talk.
Go ahead, no, you're good.
Okay, I would just say that we heard from the Tompkins County Council of Government and the HED group that ECC was tasked with exploring what we called option 5, which was the countywide build out of a municipally owned broadband service. And so that's the focus of today's presentation, and what Joe and his team have put together some information on for your information.
Great. Katie, can you also highlight too what we'll expect for our September meeting?
Yeah, we're for the September meeting of the HED committee, we plan to present you a beefy report that will lay out all the options, all the work that's been done on behalf of the county up to this point. It's roughly a 200-page report at this point, and we're in the process of editing and reviewing and making sure it's all in great shape to present. And we do intend to have a link available in the agenda packet so that people can review it beforehand if they'd like.
Great. And then also maybe just a quick update on the RFP that has sort of been moving in parallel to this process.
Sure. So ECC drafted an RFP for us to solicit kind of bids from internet service providers on what it would take to serve unserved addresses within the county. Nick has been working pretty much full time the last few days trying to rectify that draft with how the county does our RFPs, and just sent it back actually today to ECC to get the next iteration of it going. And, you know, we're hoping that within the next couple of weeks, we have it on the streets and ready for ISPs to review.
Great, appreciate it. I guess we'll turn it over to Joe and team now for the presentation.
Hey, just by the way, 200 pages, we had a lot of extra paper laying around the office. We're like puzzled, like, what do we do with this? Well, let's dump it on Tompkins County. Maybe they'll take it.
You guys are getting that page, right?
What you'll find out of that report, though, is the front of it is the data that you want, and then all the appendices are the supporting data behind it. So I don't honestly know anybody that's read all 200 pages, but if somebody does, I'd like to know. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead then. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Let's see. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. As Katie mentioned, you know, we had come up with an option 5 at the request of the county. I'm going to hit all the options really quick, but I do want to focus on option 5. You know, that seems to be what most people are interested in knowing about in broadband today. You know, no surprise given that, you know, the industry itself has let a lot of folks in a lot of communities down. So I'm going to jump into this. The solutions that we talked about originally. Okay, there it is. So option 1, if some of you may remember, is that the county would release an RFP. You have an address database of who doesn't have broadband infrastructure. That's high-speed broadband infrastructure, either coax or fiber, within close proximity of their address, and that's business and residential. And option 1 really would be to release an RFP to the providers, and then they would come back and then tell you what it would take to cover those locations. We broke the county up into different regions so that it wouldn't be one provider has to do all. One provider can choose to do all and submit on all, but you could possibly have multiple providers. So the pros again to this is that you're going to get all your addresses served, which is really the goal of the county. On the downside of that, you're going to put some taxpayer money into it. Here's a very little known surprise. Every community in the country is doing the same thing. They're putting taxpayer money into their broadband solutions. So yes, we attribute it as a con, but the reality is it's coming from the federal government. And if you don't spend it, somebody else will. So option 2 is really just a variation of option 1. Based on the county purchasing laws, you may or may not have to bid those services, and you may choose, as some communities do, to just go out and award to the service providers in those areas, or award to a single service provider. We estimate the same as 1. It's about $7 million total. And if you're questioning where that number came from, ECC calculated that if you had to build your own infrastructure to connect all of those locations that don't have it, it's about a $7 million capital cost. So that's where that number comes back. Now, in option 1 and option 2, what we would expect in most cases is that the providers would come back and say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to require the county to provide X number of dollars, and then we'll provide the rest. In very rare occasions have I ever seen where a provider would come back and say they want the county to pay for it all. And if they do that, then certainly you don't want that deal. That's not a good deal for the county. And they're always willing to come back and negotiate with you. Option 3 would be to create a public-private partnership. In this case, the county would not only build fiber to all of those locations, which is what the $7 million is, but the county would also build the middle mile infrastructure that would link those together and make them viable. And when we took a look at the $7 million cost, what that included was the money needed to build to the nearest fiber infrastructure from those locations. So that's where the 7 million came from. And if you looked at option 3, which is a public-private partnership with the open access model, then essentially what you would be doing is you'd be building out a network throughout the county to those locations. There's some distinct advantages to that. As one is you can look at connecting your public safety towers. You can look at connecting town and village offices, school districts, et cetera, and they become a cost share because they'll also help you pay for the infrastructure and operate it and maintain it. Option 4 is really a variation of option 2 and option 3, which basically is building an open access model. For those of you that are not sure what an open access model is, the Southern Tier Network is an open access model. When we started that network some 10, 11 years ago, it was within 3 counties. Now it's, I believe, 8 counties is where we're at with that. But essentially what you would be doing is you would be building fiber in option 3 to get out near the locations where those unserved are. And then the providers themselves would use that infrastructure to build to the last mile. And what that effectively does is that allows them to not have to pay the huge expense of building out to get to those locations. So that's option 4. Right now, that's probably one of the more popular options for communities who are looking to do cost reductions. And cost reductions can be anything from linking your public safety towers to connecting internal offices and things like that. Essentially, that model takes you out of the lease services agreement that you might have with a Verizon or a Spectrum. The meat on the bones. Option 5 would be to build a county-owned broadband network. And I've got some more details on this. I'm going to hit this quickly, but we estimate, and I'm saying, estimate because it takes some time to get this nailed down exact. It's $95 to $100 million. The timing is 5 to 7 years minimum. The advantage to that is it allows you to either provide service for your residents and businesses or retain someone else to do it for you. The downside of it is it's a very long time to build. It takes awful lot of money. And even if you went down this road of building your own county-owned broadband network, you're not really going to get 100% participation. You might get 50 or 60, and that's going to take 5 to 7 years or longer to do. So county 5 or county option 5. So what we think in terms of that, and the legislature's already asked us to put out the RFP. And by putting out that RFP, it doesn't mean that we can't consider any of the other options. It just means that we're going to take a look at that one first. So if you don't find what you're looking for in that, then certainly we have the ability to move on from there. Again, we estimate $95 million in cost to $100 million. And we estimate that your take rate is 50 to 60%. And someone would ask why, why wouldn't that be 100%? Because the first thing that's going to happen is Spectrum is going to cut their cost in half. And all of a sudden their broadband costs are going to go from $79 to $39. And that's generally a very common approach by the existing providers. So let's talk about the actual numbers, right? So in a residential pro forma, and you'll notice that for the rate, I did not calculate any borrowed money in there. I just kept it flat at 0%. And you can see from there what the, you can see what the numbers will be. But anyway, so for a 20-year loan term, construction costs are roughly $95 million. You can see your annual cost for the loan based on 0%. Your O&M costs, which is very important, is going to be $12,350,000. And that's going to be somewhat consistent regardless of whether you get grant money, whether you find a rich uncle that decides he's going to pay for it. The O&M costs are what they are, and that's a percentage of cost of the build. And we know that from 25 years of experience in building and developing these networks. So basically over 20 years, your total annual costs are going to be 18.6 million, or monthly costs are going to be 1.55 million. And you'll notice out of the number of customers, there's 47,993 potential locations that showed up on the latest census. And my screen's cut off here, so I can't really see. Let me see if I can move this. There we go. All right. So you'll notice that the monthly cost per residential customer to do this is $59 a month. So when you start talking about the fact that Spectrum will lower their prices down to 39 or 49, and you're already at 59 to break even, you can see that the numbers generally don't work. And that's based on a 50% take rate. And the time frame to get to that 50% take rate is going to be quite a while. It'll be minimum 5 years, possibly as long as 7. So what's also not calculated into this pro forma is money and the cash flow statements that would come along with it. And if the county decided to do this and build this network, then we certainly would do all of that. And you'd know exactly where you stand on each of those. And then if you take a look at what is the impact of the business on the residential pro forma, well, it adds about $5 million in cost to it. Again, those are estimated. You can see what your annual costs are, roughly over 20 years, $5 million a year. The O&M cost is going to be roughly 13%. Right, that has not changed. There's a capital replacement cost, and folks will ask what that is. And generally speaking, something's going to happen. Someone's going to hit a utility pole. You're going to have an ice storm, right? And you're going to have to replace some cables. So that's generally a fund that gets established at the beginning of each project and accumulates over time, hopefully, to cover any unforeseen incidents that come along. So to ramp it up on that, the impact to the businesses, it's not that significant. It adds about $4 or removes about $4 a month off the residential rate that somebody would expect to pay over 20 years. And again, that's also at 50%. It's 50% of your take rate. Are there any questions on that?
I have a question from Ian Koreman.
Thanks, Joe. So one question on this particular part. Wondering why you did the rate of the loans versus the interest that we'd be paying. That's zero. That's what the rate is, right? The interest rate?
Yeah. Yes.
We'd be paying something.
Well, you would be. That's, I just showed it at zero rate. So if you were paying, these numbers actually go up. And I do have another sheet that shows that you would get, and it's not on this particular slide, but I can send it over, and I think Katie may have it or Nick may have it, but it shows that if you're able to get a grant for this, and then the county only had to pay 25%. The thing that still gets you is the O&M costs. The $13 million a year is a lot of money.
Yeah, good to see those other sheets and maybe something comparing it with interest so that we can compare.
Yeah, we can, this isn't a spreadsheet, and what we can do, I think it's actually good if you got the spreadsheet and you played around with the numbers and said, okay, what if we were able to get a 1.7% rate? What does that look like? Right? Or if we were able to find some other way to come up with some money or dollars. And it's also good to play with the take rate as well, because right now I think we're at 50%. We're just shy of, we might be a little higher than that.
And are these numbers covering the actual internet providing? So this is not just infrastructure. So would this be, say, for instance, at the top of chart here, $74, top rate, the monthly cost per residential customer. So would that include the actual service?
That would include service, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, service to a normal customer, what you have to keep in mind is not all of the residents that live within the county are considered normal in terms of their location from infrastructure. And what I mean by that is you literally have some homes that are 1,000 feet away from the road, right? So those have to be dealt with separately. So the numbers that we're looking at here are more of an average cost. So there will be, as we said, if it were decided to go down this road eventually, then all of that would have to be physically taken into consideration, and the numbers would certainly change.
Joe, I've got a question from Mike Sigler.
I'm just wondering, that 50% take rate, I'm wondering if that's not actually middle ambitious. Just the simple fact that, hey, it's Spectrum, we were going to switch, we'd probably switch to Verizon, because my wife has a Verizon phone, and hey, they say, gig our other system, we get a discount on both. When I was with AT&T, I got DirecTV for almost free. It's like, oh, you're an AT&T customer, you'll get internet service for $25. So I mean, we're not going to have that capacity under a plan like that. I don't know if that's been your experience.
I'm sorry, there was an echo. I didn't hear all of that.
Sorry, I just didn't. I thought maybe the 50% take rate was a little high. I didn't know what your experience was with that, just because
it is.
Other companies like AT&T and Verizon have the ability to bundle things. Won't have that.
Yeah, it is high, and you'll see models being proposed all over the country, and they're saying, oh, we're going to get a 70% take rate. Well, there isn't a 70% take rate operating anywhere in the country that I'm aware of. And, we've been involved in a lot of these, and one of the better ones that we would take a look at is in Wilson, North Carolina. They've been running for 10 years, and I think they just hit 55%, maybe 60%. And they're 10 years in operation. So, the cash flow is really what tends to kill these deals more than anything. And the expectation of what the take rate would be, it's just not realistic to be higher than 60 to 70% over time.
It's Greg Mezey. If I'm hearing you correctly, this performance is really a stabilized look, and there would be about 5+ years to build the infrastructure, and then another 5+ years to get to some sort of stabilized environment in terms of take rate and adoption by the customer.
Yes, that is correct. And keep in mind, you, even as you build, you are adding customers, right? So most likely what you would do if you were doing a countywide system is you'd want to try to get as many customers on as quick as possible to get your cash flow moving. So you're going to build in Ithaca. You're going to build in communities that already have it. So, by building out in the rural areas to the folks that don't have it, you don't help your cash flow situation. And that's also a negativity, if you will, of this type of a model in a semi-rural area.
So
Especially if you have to borrow the money.
yeah, if I hear you correctly, you're targeting the most densely populated areas first and not really addressing the concern of the unserved or underserved issue until later, because you have a business model that requires cash flow to support your O&M costs.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Because you need to build that cash flow as quick as possible to sustain the network.
And if anybody has any more questions on this slide, otherwise I think you can go to the next part of your presentation.
I'll get my last slide here. So just a few things to keep in mind is that as we go through this exercise of the RFPs, we should be consistent, right? We should have a fairly consistent program that we deal with countywide. But having said that, there are going to be some areas which may not fit into that mold, and Dryden would be an example of that. They may choose to do their own, and then the county would have to make a decision based on that. But you're definitely things to consider is there's going to be some financial support required. It'll come from the county, and there's a number of ways to get that support. If you are investing in building out an infrastructure, then the county needs to consider some type of ownership. And I don't necessarily mean that the county should own the fiber, but if the county is paying a provider to build fiber infrastructure, then the county should get some of that infrastructure and use that to start to build your open access model. So you can start to look at cost reduction models for your current telecommunications charges. And to do that is generally done through an IRU, which is called an indefeasible right of use. The way that works is that you're going to pay, let's say Verizon or Spectrum, $3.5 million to build fiber to all these homes. Well, the county should secure 12 of those fibers for your own internal use in the future. So that should be explored. You definitely want, in this case, you want the service providers as your partners. I don't think it makes sense for the county to jump in and be a broadband service provider. I think you would be too far behind the game, and as we already discussed, you'd have to hit the high areas first, high concentration areas first, and you would have done nothing to solve the problem that you initially started to work on. And also included in this, there's a number of funding opportunities. The BEAD program, there's a lot of money coming out in the BEAD program. There are some capital funds projects out there that are available. There's just a number of them, and there's a list of them there. So as I mentioned, this is my last slide, I believe, but option one is being put out on the table right now, and it's going to be released. We'll evaluate what comes back on that, and if that meets the county's needs, then great, right? We're going to jump on that, and we're going to get this problem solved once and for all. If it doesn't, then there's always the other options to consider. That's it. Nap time.
So I have a quick question, Joe. You had mentioned that, I don't know if we want to stop the screen. If you want to stop your screen sharing, that way we can, there you go. You mentioned that there's possible, grants and other funding available. Is that for the initial construction cost of for that $95 to $100 million number? There's money available for that.
There is money available there, but I'm not sure how much, because if that type of a project were to get off the ground, that would have to come through the BEAD funding. And I think I think there's only about $700 million. Is that correct? Either Justin, Cameron, or Mark for the entire state.
Yeah, a little less than that, 664, I believe the number is, but yeah, you're in that ballpark, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it would be hard for the state to provide that much funding to one community versus a lot of other ones, like in the Adirondack region, for example, where they're really in trouble. So I don't think it's likely you'd get that much money, but I think you could get some.
And then is there any funding for the O&M cost, the ongoing operations of a municipal system? Or is that solely dependent on cash flow and backfill of tax revenue?
There's one of two ways to do that. One is cash flow. And we, when you start these networks, when we started Southern Tier Network, we were very careful to manage cash flow and get as much in as we could. So cash flow is going to be king on that. The other way is to look at private investment. The problem with private investment, and they're out there, you could find an investment group that would take this on and say, yeah, we'll do it. But the difficult part of that is you then become a for-profit organization because they're going to want 9% a year or more on their investment. So on top of the $100 million, they're going to want to see $9 million come back to them. And then add $9 million to the O&M, and it changes it dramatically. But that is definitely a viable option, as private investment.
And at that point in your scenario, you're almost doubling the monthly costs per residential customer.
Yeah, I would suspect that if it were privately invested and you were dealing with over a $20 million O&M, that you probably would be lucky to get 20 or 30% over time in take rate.
Ian, did you have a question?
A comment that just thinking about us having, if we were to look at this option, having to run it like a business to get the revenue, increase the revenue, especially the first couple of years, that we'd be operating it like other businesses have run it. And so they're going to the more dense areas and we have to do that. I'm just wondering at this point, and then years down the road, then we hope that there's maybe grants to help us get out to the rural areas, which is where we are now. So I'm just, unless there's something I'm missing or some big giant piece that I'm missing, even if we got some funding, like 75% funding to get this going, grants even, but when you look at the ongoing cost that we're gonna have to do in the business model that we have to do even if we do it ourselves, to me, it's just much more attractive to be able to look at one of the other options too.
Yeah, if you were just looking at the city of Ithaca, that would be one thing. It would be an easier concept and sell. But given the remote and rural areas that you have to deal with and the amount of infrastructure that would have to be built, it just makes it very tough.
Any other comments or questions? Brian?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I have first maybe I want to clarify, Annie, what you meant about, or what, if we're thinking about the ongoing costs, I guess in like, say an ideal world where we somehow got grants for all the construction and constructed everything in the next 5 years. And no new construction was needed, no new fiber construction was needed except for new housing construction. Do we have a sense in here what the cost per customer would be long term?
If
I guess so you have numbers in the chart and it looks like that is the cost for like if the residential customer fees are also covering the construction costs themselves, but no interest on anything borrowed. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got someone outside of my window cutting the grass. Sorry about that. There he is. I want to go out and yell at him, but I can't do that. I didn't hear your question. I'm sorry.
So, Veronica, are you asking if my understanding from this performance, Joe, correct me if my assumption is wrong, is that the construction costs, you have that at 0% amortized out over 10, 15, and 20 years, and the cost of that borrowing is in essentially the fourth column, and that number is factored into the monthly cost. So if the borrowing cost were to be dramatically reduced from 95 million to 50 million, let's say, that number would the monthly cost would change. Is that what you're asking, Veronica?
Yeah. I guess I'm asking, is that the case? And like, do we actually have numbers for what the monthly cost could be past paying for the construction? Or if like, in the best case scenario where the construction was somehow 100% grant funded, or in the worst case scenario where it was 0% grant funded and also we were paying interest on it.
Right. I just brought up the spreadsheet that that'll actually shows the money coming in terms of grant funds with a 25% match required by the county. Can I go ahead and share that?
Please.
Okay, and then we'll talk about, I think that'll help answer your question there. Oops, wait a minute. Now you're going to see again just how challenged I am when it comes to technology. Okay, let's see here. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm letting you into all my business secrets here. Don't share these. Anyway, so let's assume that the county got the money to build, right? And you were required to come up with a 25% match. Obviously, your cost would be a lot different. Your cost structure would be a lot different. Still at 0%, rich uncle, however it came up, you still got $12.3 million in O&M cost on an annual basis. And by the way, that number will increase over time. Still looking at the same number of customers, 26,396 customers, then that reduces it to $47 a month, right? And the main reason for that is that your O&M costs are really what's driving that up there. And we can say, oh yeah, we can do it for 8 million, but the reality is its number is pretty close at 12 to 13 million dollars. So it doesn't significantly change anything in terms of being able to offer it to a customer that would just blow Spectrum or Verizon out of the water in terms of their ability to compete. And if you look at the inclusion of the businesses on that same model, then the monthly cost actually goes down to $42 per customer. If you were able to get 100% take rate or 70% take rate, these numbers would look obviously a lot better. But here's something that we haven't said that you need to keep in mind, because you get a significant amount of investment from those providers today. And if you devalue those investments that they've made, then you're also devaluing potentially your tax shares and your tax revenues as well.
Joe, could you on line 35, I'm assuming your spreadsheet's dynamic, that you could have like a 5% rate on the county contribution?
35, I'm sorry, was that line 35?
Yeah, the 20% term.
Right.
Can you add a borrowing rate?
What would you like to see? 1.5?
I guess what are we? Let's call it 3%, maybe.
Okay, 3%.
Okay, so not material. I mean, significantly material. And question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about, when I first saw this sheet, reading it, I was thinking 10 years is what I would want to do, because the technology is changing right now with 5G and with people, a lot of people going to not having a computer, just having a phone or some type of tablet or something like that. So we don't even, I wouldn't want to do, so that's why I'm looking at the 10-year ones, because 20 years is like, this system could be obsolete, especially for cities, which we're needing the bulk of people to sign up with the city to pay our revenues, where they're having 5G, you know, over your phone, and I can do a hotspot, like my internet went down yesterday at my house, so I did a hotspot on my phone. But a lot of people are going towards that, so yeah, to me, I can't even look at 20 years and think that paying it back.
That's a good point, because what we don't know is what's on the horizon for technology. Right now, everybody's pushing fiber optics, which is valid. I mean, the performance of fiber is unparalleled to any other technology, but it's only a matter of time until they catch up with the wireless technologies and begin to provide better service with them. Satellite, we typically don't put a lot of hope into satellite. You know, they're very weather dependent. I have a satellite phone that I use sometimes, and I have to go stand outside. I can't be under a tree. I can't be in the clouds. So it's, you know, it's very weather dependent. So we don't really attribute that to a long-term broadband solution today. But the technology will change. There's no question about it.
All right, well, I appreciate that. I don't know if we get to this option, we can have that discussion. And I think that's a big if, but appreciate Joe, you and your team putting that option together. And I think it shows, you know, our flexibility and responsiveness to our municipal partners and some of the feedback we received from them, and just helped really have a holistic conversation with every option. So appreciate the work that your group did in putting this together, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next meeting in September.
Okay, hopefully it's not snowing.
Yeah, let's hope.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Mark and Cameron, have a great day. All right, next up on the agenda is under arts, culture, and tourism. We've got a brief report discussion from Nick Hempel, the tourism director, tourism program update for Q2 2023 ID 11816.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so in your packet, you'll see there is a memo for our second quarter tourism program update. It has a summary of hotel room occupancy tax collection for the second quarter, which did really well. We're tracking ahead of budget for 2023. Delinquency is looking good in terms of payments, and generally good signs on that front. We are seeing about average rates for tax exemptions. We're actually seeing a pretty good rebound for our larger properties. The properties with 11 or more rooms are actually doing a bit better than they have been in recent quarters. Yeah, so all generally good signs on the room tax front. Some updates on SPPB and committees that have been meeting since then, and announcements about grants. Also, we have the Tourism Advancement Grant, Tourism Capital Grant, and Community Celebrations Grant are all currently open and accepting applications. Doing something a little different with the Community Celebrations Grant this cycle. We're trying out video or audio applications. You still have to fill out a form, but it can be a lot shorter if you just want to record your message that way and upload it. We're trying this out for folks who may have difficulty putting their ideas in writing or maybe don't have English as their first language. So yeah, if you know folks that might be interested in that, please help us spread the word. Deadline for that is Thursday, August 31st. That's for all those grant programs, should clarify. Updates to platform also include the visitor profile study. We got 3 responses back on the request for proposals there. The evaluation panel provided some feedback, so we're kind of going through the process now of determining which of those 3 to move forward with a contract. Yeah, the rest of the report here, you'll see we have the year-to-date allocation of room tax funds, upcoming events, and the numbers for room tax. One of the things that didn't make my cutoff, because I came in, it was kind of late breaking, was the update on the Finger Lakes National Heritage Area report that the National Park Service just completed. I don't know if anyone saw this in their inbox as well, but the feasibility study was complete with what they call a positive finding. I believe this means that Congress now needs to act to designate the area as a national heritage area, which is an exciting step in that ongoing project. So, yeah, so that is my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Right.
I have math questions, I guess.
Okay.
When the allocation of room tax funds, are they, like, when are they, in what year are they allocated compared to in what year they're collected? Is there a clear relationship?
Yeah, so when I said the allocation, I mean it's under contract. We have a contract established with that organization to pay that amount of money. Not necessarily that all of the money has been transferred out of our accounting system. When the money comes in is in that same calendar year. So we receive and pay room tax within the same budget year. So.
Okay, thank you. So the allocation doesn't mean it's been paid out yet.
Not
I was looking
necessarily.
at like the year-to-date allocation for the Chamber of Commerce is greater than the year-to-date tax collected.
Correct, and that's also the full amount that we have under contract with them for this year. We pay them monthly, so you can take what we're on the 8th month, 8 out of 12, and that's basically where they're at.
Well, thank you.
Mike,
Nick, when's the event happen?
Oh, for the grants? We generally 12 months from the contract date, which is November 1st. So November this year to November next year. Or it can be a little later, but that's what we encourage.
And there'll be a spring solicitation.
There certainly will be. So that'll be announced likely early January and deadline in late February.
Thanks.
if you haven't had a chance yet and you check out the social media page for the county, you can see Nick in his acting debut, requesting video messages, which I think is fantastic. It was kind of a surprise to me to see this as I was scrolling through. I think it's just a great way to rethink the grant application. We've had a lot of conversation about how some of these smaller grants, the simple grants, are very labor intensive, both on the staff side and applicant side. So I thought that was really neat to see. So Nick, thanks for putting yourself out there and making a video to show that you can make videos, which I think is just a really progressive way for us to be trying to connect with grant applicants.
Just like we figured we should lead by example, show that it can be done. All you need is your job.
Excellent job. I would have given you the grant based on the video.
I haven't seen it yet, but it was that your acting debut, I want to clarify.
It's a good question. I mean, if you don't count like, elementary school performances, I think, yeah, I think it is.
Nothing in high school or thecollege.
Didn't really go into the thespian round. So.
Okay, so this is your start.
And didn't realize he was actually be not sort of program. Any other questions? I think one of the neat things to look at too here is the events calendar. I know that we always try to promote things within our communities, but some of the things coming up, what I'll say the Summer Groton Old Home Days, August 24th to 26th. The Zucchini Festival, which is in Brookendale, which I think Dan mentioned yesterday, which is August 26th. Farming for Freedom Trail Passport Weekend is August 26th to 27th. And then we've got a few other things in September and October. So a lot happening. You can always check out events.visitithaca.com for additional information. Any other questions for Nick and George? All right, see you next, Nick, we appreciate all the efforts, and if you could let us know how the video application process goes and how folks interact with that, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure, we'll have an update in September.
Okay. Thank you. Next, committee member reports. Anything to add by members of the committee?
Just a 20-minute speech I wrote, okay. Pretty little.
There's always one. I'm sorry, yeah, please feel free.
I don't actually have that big.
Take your time. All right, we have the minutes from July 14th, 2023. All right, can we move those, please? Moved by Brian, seconded by Annie. Any comments, discussion, edit on the minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous. That concludes our agenda for today. So we'll adjourn this meeting and look forward to seeing everybody in September. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Sorry, guys, the computer stuff is a little wonky.